Hello, my name is Tanya. It's my honor to be part of this great conference. I'm in my room in New York City, and due to some travelings inside the US, I was unable to attend the conference in person, which is a great regret for me. However, I'm going to present a part of my work here in this video, and hopefully, you can find the entire work, which is a very long version, in the conference's journal. I am originally from Iran and I grew up there, uh, but I did my undergrad and graduate studies in the US. I studied film and media studies. In this very work, I'm focusing on the relationship between city and cinema. And because I grew up in Iran, I am focusing on Tehran, the city that I grew up in. So, the city. The city has proved to be a rich and diverse cinematic setting and subject. Film theorist Krakauer called the city an exemplary and essential cinematic space. Other scholars, theorists, and philosophers have attentively studied the city and cinema alongside one another and have noted the correlation between the mobility and visual and oral sensation of the cinema and city. Cinema is able to portray and shape the way we view cities such as Paris, Los Angeles, London, Istanbul, and in my study, Tehran. Likewise, cinema itself can be understood and argued in terms of where a film takes place, in this case, the city. The cinematic setting helps to express the most vital details of the film. In discussions of Iranian cinema, Tehran is seen as an archetypal city environment. Consequently, filmmakers portray the city as the core of Iran's modernization and the center of political power. Accordingly, in the following study, I shall explain how the language of cinema has shaped Tehran and vice versa. To showcase this relationship, I shall closely explore two films. Fireworks Wednesday, directed by Asghar Farhadi in 2006, and Tranquility in the Presence of Others, directed by Nasser Taqvi in 1973. The first film is the outcome of the reformist period in Iran, a time when there was more freedom and democracy in the country. The latter, which was banned in Iran for almost 4 years, is the product of Iranian cinema before the Islamic Revolution of 1979. The primary focus of this paper is to argue that the cinematic manifestation of Tehran in the aforementioned films unfolds in two ways, which I call external and internal effects. In the former, cinema's portrayal of cities' exterior examples, the shape of buildings, streets, and the distribution of population, reflects the turbulence in the lives of its inhabitants. The effect is seen in Fireworks Wednesday. The second, the internal effect, is seen in the tranquility in the presence of others. Life in metropolitan Tehran imparts sadness and depression onto the mentalities of its inhabitants, people who, for the most part, have immigrated to the city from villages and smaller cities. The exterior and interior effects go hand in hand, as one reflects the other. The exterior chaos of the city reflects the interior turmoil of the people. External effect. The events of Fireworks Wednesday takes place on the last Wednesday before the start of spring. On this day, called Charshanbe Suri, people set off fireworks, jump over a fire, sing, and dance in the streets. Ruhi, a working-class woman, spends her day cleaning the house of a middle-class couple. There, she witnesses the ongoing dispute between the couple about the man's secret affair. Mojdeh, the wife, suspects that her husband is having an affair with the divorced woman who lives in an apartment across from them. The film becomes even more twisted when Ruhi is required to stay longer at work to finish up and thus observes a deeper layer of couple's strife. In one scene in the beginning, Ruhi walks down the street trying to find the apartment for which she is assigned to do the house cleaning, while curiously observing other buildings. The shot, which is filled with modern buildings and inhabitants who possess high-class cars, clearly suggests that this zone is an upper middle class milieu. Ruhi suddenly stops and her puzzled gaze fixes on something of which the audience is not yet aware. The reverse shot shows that the broken window of a building is what caught her attention. Later, she finds out that this very apartment is the one that she is supposed to clean. The fracture in the window, which causes her to wander, is the film's signal of welcome to her and the audience into an environment full of strife and rupture. Here, Farhadi, the director, uses the signs and signals of mise-en-scène to reflect the turbulent atmosphere of the city. When entering the home of Morteza and Mujde, the epitome of an upper middle class couple, Ruhi becomes even more baffled as the home is extremely disorderly. The home is full of unrelated things. There are books and pictures frames on the stairs, dirty dishes are spread everywhere, and clothes are on the chairs and tables. Nothing is in its proper place. Farhadi portrays the domestic troubles and violence between the characters not only in their arguments, but the turmoil fittingly manifested itself in the midst of a chaotic and messy apartment. Here, the themes of violence and conflict speak the loudest in the formal layer of the apartment. Chaos is not only portrayed inside the troubled couple's apartment, it also permeates the social fabric of the Tehran itself. The apartment is, in fact, the microcosm of the city around it. Towards the end of the film, Morteza decides to take his son to celebrate Chashanbe Suru in the park. Ruhi accompanies them since Morteza promised to drop her off at her home, which is far away from the middle class part of the city. While driving through the city, the film showcases shots of metropolitan life that clearly show in it a state of chaos. The youth use firecrackers and other explosive elements to celebrate, and families gathered in public places such as the park to sing, dance, and eat. Later that night, Morteza, his son, and Ruhi are wandering around the city while people are still celebrating. The camera constantly pans to the right and left, showcasing the city's madness and people's excitement as they jump over fire and exploding firecrackers. In the midst of this clamor, shots of cracked walls, modern buildings, fireworks, and turmoil, Farhadi depicts the explosiveness of domestic strife with the mayhem in the city. And the film becomes a battleground of undeclared war between sexes and classes. The result of this conflict is the impossibility of achieving any form of reconciliation. Tehran is a city at war with itself and with its citizens, all of whom have turned against each other. Indeed, Tehran has become a ground for a different kind of battle, as its citizens ruthlessly cheat, manipulate, and abuse one another. It is a mad place, and in all of this deception and loss of values, no one stays true to her or his principles. The internal effect. In tranquility in the presence of other, we witness how the city's outward appearance results in an internal effect within its citizens. The films tell the story of a former army colonel who immigrates to Tehran with his wife and finds it very difficult to adapt to city life. The colonel lived in Tehran many years ago, and at some point he decided to move to a village in the country. Now, after many years, he comes back to the metropolitan Tehran and finds it very different from the city it used to be. The hustle and bustle of the city, with its tall buildings of monochromatic colors, its overpopulated streets filled with chaos and clamor, and its feelings of soullessness, caused the colonel extreme grief. What is more is that the colonel is bewildered by the change in his two daughters, whom he sent to live in Tehran many years ago. City life, he finds, has completely changed their behavior as well as their lifestyles. The confrontation between the colonel and his much transformed daughters leads him to become isolated in the feelings of solitude. Here, the director draws our attention to the theme of alienation as a result of changes within the city. The film also indicates that there is a gap between old and modern spaces. The film centers on the confrontation or interaction between two different spaces. The modern Tehran and the old Tehran, where the colonel used to live before moving to the country. Years ago, when he lived in Tehran, he served as an official position in the army, but now, after many years, no one sees him, respects him, or treats him as a decent man. Even the facade of the city has changed. The huge towers of steel and concrete have wiped out much of the city's history. In one scene, he goes to see a group of soldiers marching while the Iranian military song plays in the background. He finds the combination of marching and the song discordant. In the colonel's eyes, Tehran citizens have become cruel and untrustworthy, and values such as honor, integrity, culture, and knowledge have lost their meanings in favor of greed and material objects. In this confused state, it has become increasingly difficult to distinguish the real from unreal, the present from the past. He then runs into a bar to drown his sorrows in alcohol. This behavior is his response to his own nostalgia for a forgotten Tehran, as well as to the change in his beloved daughters. Tehran's transformation and its forgotten history can in fact be seen as personified by the colonel. Both have faded out and lost their glamour. Now he can only yearn for the city that he remembers because the shock, disgust, temptation, and violence of Tehran beat him ruthlessly. He finds himself not only violated but also forced to continue plunging into the unknown as he continues to explore the city. In the final scene, the colonel's feelings of alienation by Tehran brings him to the state of madness, and his family decides to take him to the madhouse. The scene acts as a vehement critique of the fact that in Tehran there is no longer a place for people who long for tradition and nostalgia, because Tehran has embraced modernization. They put him in the car and he observes the chaotic city from the window. The shot is taken in a paradoxical way. The image of trees and nature, symbols of freedom and beauty, are captured in the window, but the window's frame appears as that of a prison, asserting that Tehran itself is a prison and a madhouse. In the end, both films invite viewers to reflect on the continuous transformation of Tehran, allowing us to delve into the social and political changes this metropolis has undergone over the 4 decades, 1973 till 2006. Through the images of streets, tall modern buildings, frustrated drivers, restricted pedestrian movement, and traffic jams, we observe the endless chaos at the heart of the city. The city becomes an emblem of threats and fears, and its continued modernization has created an identical mass. The fears and threat experienced by Tehran citizens, particularly the vulnerable, provide a claustrophobic image of the city, and these two directors depict how the city has ceased to protect its helpless inhabitants. Over time, Tehran in Fireworks Wednesday and Tranquility in the Presence of Others sinks to a level at which its inhabitants are cruel and untrustworthy, with values such as honor, integrity, and honesty superseded by greed. In this disorder, clamor, and chaos of the city, it has become very challenging to distinguish the real from unreal, the truth from falsehood, so much so that the city itself and the very existence of its citizens come under question.